Before we start, please make sure to like, subscribe and share this video with your friends and family. Also, can you please tell me from where you're watching? Thanks. My name is Evelyn Martin, and I was 68 when I realized just how fragile family ties can be. I live alone in a modest house in a quiet suburban neighborhood, where my days blend into one another, simple, predictable, and largely uneventful. I don't mind it, though. After raising 2 children, putting in 40 years of work as an accountant, and seeing my husband pass away a decade ago, I've come to find comfort in routine. But the holidays, especially Christmas, always brought a certain spark to my life. It was the one time a year when I could expect my son, Eric, and his wife, Beth, to come over for a family gathering. This year, however, something felt different. It was almost as if the air itself was charged with a quiet tension. The evening started like any other. I'd spent the day preparing the meal, setting the table, and arranging the drinks, trying my best to make everything perfect. The aroma of roast turkey filled the house, and I could hear the low hum of festive music playing in the background as I finished arranging the desserts on the counter. Eric and Beth arrived early, as they usually did, and I greeted them with a warm hug. Eric, my only son, was the light of my life. He had always been a good boy, though over the years, I noticed that he seemed to be growing more distant, his visits shorter, his demeanor more distracted. Beth, on the other hand, was always polite, if not a little overbearing at times, but I had never thought much of it. They both brought energy to the house, and for a moment, I forgot about the nagging feeling that had been creeping in. The dinner went as planned, mostly. Eric sat at the head of the table, Beth beside him, and I served the meal with a smile on my face. The conversation was light at first, discussions about work, what we all had been up to, and the usual holiday pleasantries. It felt comfortable, familiar, even with the slight tension lingering in the air. But then, out of nowhere, the words that would change everything were spoken. As the evening wore on, we sat around the table, slowly finishing our meals. That's when it happened. Eric looked at me, his eyes cold, and with a bite in his voice that I had never heard before, he muttered, "I wish you were never born." His words echoed through the room, and in an instant, the warmth of the holiday disappeared. It was as if the air had been sucked out of the room, and I felt every muscle in my body tighten. Beth remained silent, her gaze dropping to her plate, her fingers tightly clutching her wine glass. Eric's face was impassive, as if the words meant nothing to him, but they crushed me to my core. I sat there, stunned, not sure how to respond. The words burned in my chest, and for the first time in my life, I felt like I didn't belong in my own family. The years of sacrifice, the love, the care I had poured into them, it all seemed meaningless in that moment. The dinner continued on, but I wasn't there anymore. I was somewhere else, somewhere far away, trapped in the devastating weight of my son's words. The cracks had finally shown, and there was no denying it anymore. I knew that something needed to change. I knew that this was the breaking point. The rest of the evening passed in a blur, like I was watching someone else's life unfold before me. I remember Eric trying to make small talk, but I couldn't bring myself to respond. How could I? How could I pretend everything was okay after those words? The worst part was that I couldn't even ask him why he said it. The silence between us felt suffocating, like a heavy fog I couldn't escape. Finally, I excused myself. "I'm tired," I said, my voice shaking slightly. "I think I'll head to bed early." Eric barely looked up from his phone, a distracted wave of his hand as he muttered something that could have been a goodbye. I didn't care. My heart felt hollow, and I needed space. I retreated to my bedroom, locking the door behind me. I sat on the edge of my bed, my hands trembling as I tried to make sense of what had just happened. My mind kept circling back to the moment when Eric's words had sliced through the air, the finality in his voice. The coldness. I could barely breathe. I had spent my life raising him, putting everything I had into making sure he had a better future. I worked long hours, sacrificed my own dreams for his. And this is what I had received in return, a cruel, unprovoked declaration that I wasn't even worth the space I occupied in his life. That night, I couldn't sleep. I tossed and turned, thoughts spinning in my mind, over and over again. Was he angry about something? Was this about money? Did he resent everything I had done for him? I tried to tell myself that it was just a moment of frustration, that maybe he didn't mean it. But deep down, I knew better. The words had been deliberate, calculated even. Morning came, and with it, a sense of cold clarity. I knew I couldn't let this go. I had to do something. The betrayal I had felt last night wasn't just about those words, it was about years of emotional neglect. It was about the realization that no matter what I did, no matter how hard I tried to be there for him, it was never enough. As I prepared breakfast, my hands moved mechanically, the eggs sizzling in the pan. The smell of coffee filled the air, but I couldn't shake the numbness inside me. I had to make a choice. When Eric and Beth left that afternoon, I knew exactly what I was going to do. It wasn't a decision I made lightly, but it was the only one that made sense. I was going to disinherit him. I was done being his backup, done being the one he called on only when he needed something. I pulled out my old will and read through it. It had been a while since I'd updated it, but I knew exactly what needed to be changed. The house, the money, everything I had worked for all my life, it would go to charity. To people who truly valued hard work, kindness, and respect. Eric's name was scratched out with a firm hand. The ink dried, and with it, my decision was final. I didn't know if I'd ever see him again, but I didn't care. What mattered now was my peace of mind. I wasn't going to let him dictate my worth. Not anymore. The phone call came 2 days after the party. My hands were shaking as I stared at the screen, my heart thudding in my chest. It was Eric. He was calling. I didn't answer. I knew what he'd want, an explanation, a justification, maybe even an apology. But how could I explain something that was so obvious? How could I explain the years of neglect, the quiet resentment that had festered under his polite smile? I dropped the phone back on the counter. My mind was spinning. But no, this wasn't about him. It was about me. It had to be. The decision I'd made, disinheriting him, had been a release. A violent, gut-wrenching release. The weight on my chest was gone, but there was no joy in it, only an empty space I couldn't quite fill. I stared out the window at the darkening sky. The world outside was quiet, peaceful. And inside, my house was silent too. Too silent. Then it hit me, I couldn't do it. I couldn't keep living in this house, where every creak of the floorboards felt like a reminder of all the years I'd spent trying to hold my family together. The silence between us, it was suffocating. I grabbed my coat. It was time to go somewhere else, to somewhere far from everything that had broken me. I had to find something to make me feel alive again. With one final glance at the house, I walked out the door, shutting it behind me. The wind slapped my face as I stepped into the cold, but I didn't care. I didn't feel anything except a strange, restless energy bubbling inside me. I had no idea where I was going, but I knew I couldn't stay here. My phone rang again. This time, I answered. Mom, Eric's voice came through, shaky, uncertain. We need to talk. I'm not coming back, Eric, I said, my voice steady, cold. I can't. Not after what you said. The silence on the other end was deafening. Then, finally, I heard him. Mom, please. The plea hit me like a punch to the gut. I wanted to cry, to scream at him, to make him understand. But I didn't. I've already made my decision, I said, the words coming out firmer than I expected. And it's final. The line went dead. I stood there for a moment, the phone still pressed to my ear. I didn't know if I was sad or relieved. But what I did know was that I had taken control, finally. For the first time in years, I felt like I was doing something for me, and not for him. It's funny how quickly life can turn on a dime. One moment, I was standing outside my home, my heart pounding with the echoes of my decision. The next, I was walking aimlessly down the street, my mind still reeling from the phone call. It was cold, but I didn't feel it. Everything felt numb, like I was floating through some strange fog, disconnected from reality. And then, as if on cue, something happened that made everything feel very real again. A figure appeared at the end of the street, someone I hadn't seen in years. I squinted, trying to make out the person. It was a man, tall and broad-shouldered, walking slowly toward me. As he came closer, recognition hit like a freight train. David. My ex-husband's brother. I hadn't spoken to David in ages. After my divorce, we'd lost touch. My ex-husband's side of the family had always been distant, their interactions more out of obligation than genuine connection. But David, he had always been different. Kind, quiet, and, oddly enough, a bit of a loner, just like me. Evelyn. His voice cut through the air, a deep baritone, still familiar after all these years. I stopped in my tracks, unsure of what to do. He was close now, close enough that I could see the worry etched on his face. David? I managed to say, my voice barely a whisper. What the hell happened, Ev? He was standing in front of me now, his expression one of both concern and confusion. I heard about the party. Heard what Eric said. Are you okay? I wanted to snap at him, tell him to mind his own business. But I couldn't. Not when his eyes were filled with genuine care. I'm fine, I said, a little too quickly. Just, needed some air. He didn't buy it. His gaze softened as he looked at me, his eyes scanning my face like he was trying to read some hidden message. I don't believe you, he said gently. But okay, I get it. You don't want to talk about it. But can I at least walk with you? I hesitated for a moment, then nodded. We started walking side by side, the quiet hum of the city around us, a contrast to the chaos swirling inside me. So, David began, his voice casual but careful. What's the plan now? What are you gonna do? I looked at him, my heart still heavy. I don't know. I've already made my decision about Eric. I'm done. I can't keep pretending everything's okay. David nodded, his lips pressed into a thin line. We walked for a while in silence, the weight of the words hanging between us. You're not alone in this, you know, David finally said, breaking the quiet. If you ever need anything, I'm here. His words hit me harder than I expected. In that moment, something inside me shifted. I had been so focused on what I was losing, my son, my family, that I had forgotten there were still people who cared about me. David wasn't a savior. He wasn't going to fix everything. But for the first time in a long while, I felt like maybe, just maybe, I wasn't invisible. The walk ended too soon, and I found myself standing in front of my old house again, my heart racing. David looked at me one last time, his expression kind but determined. I'll check in on you soon, okay? He said, his voice sincere. I nodded, a small, grateful smile playing on my lips. I'll be fine, I said, though part of me wasn't so sure. As David walked away, I realized something important. I wasn't alone, not really. And that was the first glimmer of hope I'd felt in days. It was a week later when I got the call. The house felt quieter than usual. The loneliness had crept in, as it always did after an emotional storm. The walls seemed to close in around me, and even the familiar creak of the floorboards felt alien, like I was living in someone else's house. I had spent the past several days doing exactly what I had promised myself, nothing. Just sitting in the silence and trying to absorb the weight of my decision. I was still processing the night at the family party, and Eric's words replayed in my mind over and over again, like an echo that wouldn't fade. And then, the phone rang. I wasn't surprised. I had been expecting this moment, the moment when the phone call would come, and I'd have to face the consequences of disinheriting my son. But what I hadn't expected was who was on the other end of the line. It was Patricia. Evelyn, darling, how are you? Her voice was too sweet, too polished. I could almost hear the smile on her face, even though I knew she wasn't smiling. I felt a jolt in my chest, the kind you get when you're about to walk into a room full of people you'd rather avoid. I didn't want to talk to her. I didn't want to hear anything from her. But I didn't have much of a choice. I'm doing fine, Patricia, I said, keeping my tone neutral, my hands gripping the phone tightly. She wasted no time. Well, I've been thinking about you, Evelyn. About everything that happened. I think we should meet. I believe there's something we can discuss, something important. I froze, a sense of dread creeping over me. I knew exactly where this was going. They wanted something. Patricia, I'm not interested in any of your schemes. I've made my decision. You don't need to worry about me. I tried to end the conversation, but she wasn't having it. Oh, no, 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 Evelyn. This isn't about Eric, or me, or even the money. It's about you. You deserve more, and we both know it. I have a proposal for you, something that could change everything. I could feel the tension in my jaw. What are you talking about? I asked, my voice cold, but curiosity pricking at me despite myself. Patricia paused, then continued, her voice dropping to a near whisper. I've been in touch with a few people. Some very important people. We can help you, Evelyn. We can help you secure your future, your legacy. All you have to do is trust me. Trust us. The words hit me like a slap to the face. This wasn't just a friendly offer, it was a calculated pitch. They wanted something from me, and I could smell it a mile away. The question was, what? No, I said firmly, my hand tightening around the phone. I don't need your help. I've made my peace with what I've done. I don't need any of you trying to fix things. But Patricia didn't give up. Evelyn, listen to me. If you reconsider, you can ensure that everything you've worked for is protected. There are people who want to make sure you're taken care of. You don't have to do it alone. You can have more than you ever dreamed of. A sick feeling churned in my stomach. I could almost see her, leaning in close, whispering these words with a smile on her lips, hiding the true meaning behind them. She wasn't offering me support. She was offering me a deal. And deals like that came with strings attached. I wasn't stupid. I knew exactly what they were after. But I also knew one thing, I couldn't let them have it. I'll never trust you, Patricia, I said, my voice unwavering. And I certainly won't let you control my future. There was a long pause on the other end of the line. I could almost feel the temperature drop as Patricia processed my words. Then, in a tone that dripped with thinly veiled menace, she said, fine. But remember, Evelyn, some offers come only once. Don't say I didn't warn you. The line went dead, and I dropped the phone into my lap, my heart racing. The offer was as hollow as I expected it to be. But what shook me wasn't the threat, it was the reality that my family, the people I had sacrificed everything for, were now turning on me. The line had been drawn, and I wasn't about to cross it. I leaned back in my chair, staring at the empty room around me, and I realized something. I was done with being the one who always gave. I wasn't going to be used any longer. It was time to take control. Time to claim what was mine. I wasn't prepared for what happened next. 2 days after my conversation with Patricia, the doorbell rang. I wasn't expecting anyone. My heart skipped a beat as I walked to the door, wondering if it was Eric finally coming to face the consequences of his words. But when I opened it, I froze. Standing in front of me was a woman I didn't recognize, her face calm but with an intensity in her eyes that made me uneasy. She was tall, with dark hair pulled back into a neat ponytail, and she wore a simple black suit that screamed, professional. There was something about her that felt almost out of place. Can I help you? I asked, instinctively stepping back to close the door, but she stepped forward, her presence commanding. I'm here on behalf of Patricia, Mrs. Martin, the woman said, her voice steady, unyielding. We need to discuss the proposal we've been offering you. I frowned, my pulse quickening. This wasn't just a casual visit. This was something far more calculated. I've already made myself clear, I said firmly, but my voice trembled just a little. I don't want anything from Patricia or anyone else she's involved with. The woman didn't flinch. Instead, she held up a folder, its contents hidden by a plain manila cover. This is about your will, Mrs. Martin. Patricia's not the only one interested in your assets. We've been monitoring the situation, and there's a potential partnership we'd like to discuss with you. I felt a chill run down my spine. Monitoring? I repeated, my mind racing. What the hell are you talking about? The woman opened the folder, revealing a stack of papers. She turned to one page and slid it toward me. This is a copy of your recent will update, signed and notarized. We've been keeping an eye on your financial situation. Your assets. Your investments. I felt a lump in my throat. This wasn't just about the money. This was about control. They were trying to manipulate me into something I wasn't ready for. How do you have this? I demanded, my voice shaking with a mixture of anger and fear. This is private. Her eyes met mine, cold and calculating. You'd be surprised what people can find when they look hard enough. We know everything about you, Mrs. Martin. Your house, your savings, your photography business. Everything. I wanted to slam the door in her face, but something stopped me. The words had hit me like a punch to the gut. They were watching me. They had been watching me all along. "You're trying to intimidate me," I said, trying to keep my composure, though I felt like I was going to crumble. "I won't be bullied." The woman's lips curled into a smile, but it wasn't friendly. "We're not here to intimidate you, Mrs. Martin. We're here to offer you something that could make your life easier. It's not too late to change your mind. We can still work together. But the clock is ticking." The pressure in my chest grew. I wanted to tell her to get lost, to slam the door and never look back, but the fear gnawing at me told me this wasn't something I could ignore. This wasn't just about money anymore, it was about power. About who controlled what was left of my life. "I'm not interested in your offer," I said, finally summoning the strength to push her away. "Get off my property." For a moment, she didn't move. But then, without a word, she stepped back, turning to leave. "We'll be in touch, Mrs. Martin. Don't make the mistake of thinking you have all the time in the world." As she walked down my driveway, I stood frozen in the doorway, my mind reeling. I slammed the door shut and leaned against it, my breath coming in shallow gasps. They were getting closer. The walls were closing in. I didn't know how much longer I could hold out. But one thing was certain, I wasn't going to let them win. Not now. Not ever. That night, sleep didn't come easy. Every shadow in my room seemed to whisper, every creak of the house felt like someone was lurking just beyond my door. I couldn't shake the feeling that Patricia's offer wasn't just about money or control. There was something darker brewing beneath the surface. I tossed and turned in my bed, my mind racing. Why had David shown up? Why had Patricia sent that woman to my door? And why the hell did they think they could manipulate me like this? The sound of my phone vibrating on the nightstand broke through my thoughts. I grabbed it, expecting to see another call from Eric or Patricia, but the name on the screen made my heart skip a beat. It was David. I hesitated for a moment, my thumb hovering over the green button. Part of me wanted to ignore it. I didn't want to get involved with anyone, especially not after everything that had happened. But another part of me needed answers. I answered. "David?" My voice sounded small, fragile, even to my own ears. "Evelyn," his voice was urgent. "I need to talk to you. Something's going on. I've been doing some digging, and I think I found something you need to know." I sat up straight in bed, my pulse quickening. "What do you mean? What have you found?" "There's more to this than you think," he continued, his voice low. "I've been in contact with a few people, and there are things about Patricia and her plans that you don't know. Things that could change everything for you." I felt a cold chill run down my spine. "What do you mean? Is it about the will?" "Not just the will, Evelyn. There's more. You need to be careful. There's something going on behind the scenes that could ruin everything. They've been making moves, ones you haven't noticed." I felt a knot tighten in my stomach. This wasn't just about family anymore. It was about something much bigger. The power play I had thought was just a little drama had turned into something dangerous. And I was at the center of it. "David, what are you talking about?" I demanded, my voice trembling now. "What are they planning?" "There's a lot I can't say over the phone," he said. "But I need you to meet me. Tomorrow. I'll explain everything then." I stared at the phone in my hand, my head spinning. What could David possibly know? Why hadn't he told me this sooner? And what had Patricia and her people been doing behind my back? "I'll meet you," I said, before I could think it through. "Where?" "Same place we used to go," he said. "The old diner on Maple Street. I'll be there at noon. Don't be late." I hung up the phone, my hands still shaking. I had no idea what David had uncovered, but one thing was clear, this was far from over. I stood up, pacing the room. The walls felt like they were closing in again, but this time, I wasn't sure if I could escape. Tomorrow, I'd get answers. And I was ready for whatever David had to say. Because if what he was hinting at was true, if there were things going on that I didn't know about, then everything was about to change. The next day, I found myself sitting in the familiar booth of the diner. The smell of fresh coffee and sizzling bacon filled the air, but it did nothing to calm the storm brewing in my chest. I was nervous, more than I cared to admit. David hadn't shared much over the phone, but the urgency in his voice had been unmistakable. Something was wrong, and I needed to know what. The diner was quiet, a rare weekday lull. I looked at the clock, 11:45 a.m. I had arrived early, hoping to steel myself for whatever David had uncovered. The thought of facing more betrayal, more lies, was overwhelming, but I had no choice. This was bigger than me now. I had no idea what David had been digging into, but the pieces had started to fit together in my mind. Patricia's manipulations, the strange woman who'd visited me, and now David's cryptic warnings, it was all pointing to something far more sinister. Then, the bell above the door jingled. I looked up, and there he was. David, as calm as ever, strolling into the diner like nothing had changed. But I could see the tension in his posture, the way his eyes scanned the room like he was waiting for someone, or something. He slid into the booth across from me, his face serious, his eyes avoiding mine for a moment before meeting my gaze. "You were right," he said, his voice low. "This isn't just about money. It's about power. Control. And you're at the center of it." I leaned forward, my heart pounding. "What are you talking about? What have you found?" David's eyes flicked nervously toward the door before he spoke again, lowering his voice even more. "Patricia's been in contact with some very influential people. People who have been quietly pulling strings behind the scenes. And they want to make sure they stay in control. They've been watching you, Evelyn. And they've been making moves." I felt a chill rush through me. "What kind of moves?" David paused, choosing his words carefully. "They've been making sure that you're isolated. That you don't have anyone on your side. They know about the will change, they know about your business, and they know you're starting to get a little too independent for their liking." My stomach twisted. This was worse than I thought. The realization hit me hard. Patricia wasn't just trying to manipulate me for my money, she and her people wanted to control every part of my life. "Why are they doing this?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "What do they want from me?" David hesitated for a moment, glancing around the diner before leaning in closer. "They want to make sure you're not a threat to their plans. They need your assets. They need your business. And, Evelyn, they need you to stay quiet. If you don't, things are going to get ugly. They'll do whatever it takes to get what they want." I felt the blood drain from my face. The words hung in the air, suffocating me. "What do you mean, ugly?" David's expression darkened. "I've been hearing whispers, Evelyn. They're not afraid to get their hands dirty. They'll come for you if you resist." I sat back in the booth, the weight of his words sinking in. The life I thought I had left, my peace, my independence, my sense of control, was slipping away. "Why are you helping me?" I asked, the question escaping before I could stop it. "What do you want from me?" David looked at me, his gaze softening. "I'm doing this because you're family, Evelyn. And I know you're stronger than they think. But you need to act fast. They're moving quickly, and the longer you wait, the more difficult it's going to be to get out from under their thumb." I nodded slowly, the reality of the situation settling in like a heavy stone in my stomach. It wasn't just about money anymore, it was about survival. "You have to make a choice, Evelyn," David continued, his voice urgent. "You can either give in to them, live the rest of your life under their control, or you can fight. But if you want to fight, you have to be ready for what comes next." I looked out the window, the sun setting behind the buildings in the distance. For the first time in days, I felt a flicker of something inside me, something I hadn't felt in a long time. It was determination. A need to fight for my own life, my own future. I turned back to David, my voice steady, my resolve firm. "I'm not going down without a fight." The next few days felt like they were stretching out in front of me like an endless road, full of unknowns. I had made my choice, but now it was time to act. The decisions I was about to make would either free me, or completely entrench me in a life of servitude to people who only saw me as a tool to use. David's warning echoed in my mind constantly. I needed to stay ahead of Patricia and her manipulative game. I needed to be smart, cautious, but above all, I needed to be ruthless. I couldn't afford to let fear guide me now. I spent hours researching, diving into everything I could find about Patricia's associates, the people pulling her strings. It felt like peeling back the layers of a thick, dark fog that had been shrouding my life. Every lead I followed only revealed more connections, more people involved in what I was beginning to understand was a much larger scheme than I had ever realized. This wasn't just about me or my son. This was about something far more dangerous, and far more lucrative. I was sitting in my living room, my fingers flying over the keyboard of my laptop, when the doorbell rang. The sound cut through the silence like a knife. My heart skipped, and I felt a cold sweat form at the back of my neck. I wasn't expecting anyone. I stood up slowly, cautiously, my mind racing. Could it be Patricia? Or someone else sent by her? My thoughts were interrupted by the bell ringing again. Whoever it was, they weren't going to leave without an answer. I opened the door, and there she was. Amanda. Her face was tight, her eyes calculating, and she stood in the doorway, holding a large envelope in her hands. "Mom," she said, her voice dripping with an over-earnest sweetness that made my skin crawl. "I've been trying to reach you. Can we talk?" I didn't invite her in. Instead, I crossed my arms and leaned against the doorframe. "What do you want, Amanda?" Her smile faltered for a brief second, but she recovered quickly. "We need to clear the air. I know things haven't been great between us. But what happened with Eric, this isn't you, Mom. This isn't how things should end." I raised an eyebrow. "You don't get to tell me how things should end. After what Eric said to me, I'm done. I don't need your pity." Amanda stepped closer, her voice lowering. "This isn't pity. This is about family. About doing what's right. We want to make things right between us." I stiffened. "Who's we?" She held up the envelope, a faint glint of something in her eyes that I couldn't place. "It's from Patricia. She's trying to help you, Mom. She really is. All of this, the disinheritance, the family issues, it can all be fixed. You don't have to isolate yourself. You don't have to live alone like this. We want to help." I stared at her, the envelope dangling from her hand like a threat. "Help me with what exactly? What game are you playing at now, Amanda?" Her eyes darkened for a split second before the smile returned. "It's not a game, Mom. It's a second chance. Patricia wants to offer you a place in her circle. You don't have to be alone. You can have a future. You can have everything you've ever wanted. But you need to come back to us. Come back to the family." I felt a surge of anger rise in me, but I swallowed it. I wasn't going to give her the satisfaction of seeing me break. "And what does this come with, Amanda? What do you want from me in exchange for this help?" She hesitated, and in that moment, I saw the real Amanda, the one who had always been more interested in what she could gain than in any real connection. "It's not about what we want from you, Mom. It's about giving you what you deserve." I felt my stomach churn. Everything she said, every word, was a lie. I grabbed the envelope from her hand and tore it open. Inside were papers, more documents, more contracts. I skimmed them quickly, my pulse quickening. There it was, the ultimatum. If I accepted their offer, I would be under their control. All of my assets, my house, my business, my investments, would be turned over to Patricia and her people. They were offering me a future, but it came at a price. My independence. My dignity. My ability to make my own choices. I looked up at Amanda, my eyes hard. "I'll never sign this." Her smile faltered again, but only for a moment. "You'll regret it, Mom. This is your last chance. You don't understand how dangerous it is out there. You think you can handle this on your own, but you can't. Patricia's not someone you want as an enemy." I slammed the envelope on the counter, my voice shaking with fury. "Get out of my house, Amanda. I'm done." She stood there for a moment, looking at me with a mixture of pity and anger, before turning and leaving without another word. I stood there, the silence crashing over me. The betrayal was deeper than I had imagined. And now, it wasn't just about Eric or Patricia, it was about my entire family. But one thing was certain, I wasn't going to let them win. The weeks that followed felt like I was in the eye of a storm, calm on the outside, but chaos swirling all around me. I knew they were watching, waiting for me to slip, to break. But I wasn't going to give them the satisfaction. I was done being their pawn. I spent my days preparing for what was coming. I had to be smart. Every move I made, every word I spoke, had to count. There could be no mistakes. Patricia and Amanda had underestimated me, and now, it was time to turn the tables. But there was still one thing I had to do before I could make my final play. David had been my lifeline. The only person who had stood by me when the rest of the world seemed to turn its back. But even David couldn't protect me from everything. I had to go to the heart of this thing, to the source, and confront it head-on. I made the decision to visit Patricia. Face to face. It was time to end this, once and for all. I pulled into the parking lot of the lavish building that housed Patricia's office. The glass walls gleamed in the afternoon sun, a stark contrast to the darkness brewing inside. The moment I stepped out of the car, I felt the weight of the decision settle into my chest. This wasn't just a confrontation, it was the final act in a long, painful battle for my life. The receptionist at the front desk greeted me with a cool smile as I asked for Patricia. She didn't say much, just gestured toward the elevator, as if she already knew why I was here. I rode the elevator up, each floor passing with a soft ding that seemed to echo in my mind. When the doors finally opened on the top floor, I walked into her office without hesitation. Patricia was sitting behind her massive desk, the same smooth smile playing on her lips, but there was something different in her eyes. She knew why I was here. She had to. "Evelyn, darling," she said, her voice sickly sweet. "It's so good to see you. I'm glad you came." I didn't sit. I stood, my posture straight, my eyes locked on hers. "Cut the crap, Patricia. I'm done playing games. I'm not signing your damn papers. I'm not going to be part of your scheme." Her smile didn't falter. "Evelyn, you're being rash. This is the best thing for you. We're offering you security, stability. You don't have to live this way anymore." I leaned forward, my voice cold. "No. You want control. You want my life. But I'm not giving it to you. I'm not giving up everything I've worked for just because you think you can buy me." She leaned back in her chair, her fingers steepled in front of her. "You don't understand, do you? You don't have a choice. This isn't about what you want. It's about what we want. And you'll regret not agreeing to our terms. You'll see. You can't fight us forever." I felt a jolt of anger surge through me. "I'm not afraid of you. And I'm not afraid of what you'll do. You think you can control me? You're wrong." She stood, her heels clicking on the floor as she slowly approached me, her gaze never leaving mine. "We're past the point of talking now, Evelyn. You're making a big mistake. And I'm afraid there's no turning back." My heart was pounding, but I didn't back down. This was it. The moment I'd been preparing for. "I'm done with you. Done with all of you." Patricia's face flickered with something I couldn't quite place, anger. Frustration. But she quickly masked it with that same practiced smile. "Well, then, Evelyn, if you insist on this path, I'll have to make sure you regret it. You're not the only one with power here." She turned to her desk, picking up the phone with a slow, deliberate movement. "I'll make sure you understand the consequences of your decision. I'm not finished with you yet." Before I could say another word, she was already dialing. But I wasn't afraid anymore. I had made my choice. This was the last time I'd let anyone control me. As I turned to leave, I heard her voice, sharp and final. "This isn't over, Evelyn. You'll see." I walked out of that office, the weight of her words hanging in the air behind me. But this time, they didn't feel like a threat. They felt like the last gasp of someone losing control. I knew what was coming next. But I was ready. Ready to fight, ready to win. No more hiding. No more running. This was my life. And I was taking it back.